Welcome to Gene's Reviews, where I basically do whatever the hell I want. When make-believe becomes a nightmare. Today we're going to look at top 10 terrifying evil demons who pretended to be imaginary friends. This is from Most Amazing Top 10.
At number 10, we have The Faceless Man. This one was written by a young mother whose son would talk about a creepy man he would always see in his grandparents' bedroom. That sounds completely safe and normal. Just a guy that nobody knows about hanging around in a bedroom. It sounds like he has the best intentions. Well, the little boy said even though the man was creepy, he would talk to him and he seemed like a nice guy, but he made the boy feel uncomfortable. Now, the mom knew that this couldn't be a real person, but the more and more that the little boy talked about it, the more the mother's concern grew. It seemed that every time he went to visit his grandparents, he would have an encounter with this creepy man. Eventually, the mom asked what he looked like, and the little boy said, "Oh, he doesn't have a face." That will make it easy to sleep at night. A faceless demon that is making pals with your toddler. One of the toughest parts about being a parent is controlling the people your kids are exposed to, especially when they come from an alternate demonic universe. At number 9, we have Michael. So one of the best places to make friends is on vacation. You run into some other people who are on vacation, everyone feels loose and wild, you've got no responsibilities, maybe you all have too much to drink and everyone keeps a secret. Great times and never-ending memories. Well, sometimes you meet a bunch of like-minded people ready to make mistakes, and sometimes you're a little girl and you meet an invisible boy on the beach named Michael. The Reddit user I'm Not a Crazy Person wrote a story about a boy that no one could see that she met while she was on a trip with her parents in Florida. They were all on the beach and she spent the day playing with someone named Michael. When it was time to leave, she asked if Michael could come home with them. Her mom thought it was all just in her little girl's head, so she said yes. For years she said she could play with Michael and remember it all so vividly. It was until one day that Michael said he found his family and he was going home. Was this all in the little girl's head, or was there a ghost freeloading off them for years? At number 7, we have Grateful. A young girl by the name of Ruby was interviewed for a magazine. The article was about imaginary friends. Ruby described her imaginary friend as a 14-year-old girl named Grateful who was pregnant with 2 kids and had yellow eyelashes which let her see in the dark. It seemed like a fun character until the article was published, and then an actress by the name of Natalie Morales contacted the girl's mother through Twitter, giving her details on why this wasn't an imaginary friend but a ghost of a pregnant who was murdered. Ooh. At number 6, we have Girl in the Closet. Next, we got what is for sure the creepiest one on the list so far. This story comes from a mom whose daughter would talk about a girl named Kelly who lived in her closet. Kelly would do pretty normal stuff. They would play together, Kelly would sometimes hang on a rocking chair, which is a huge ghost red flag, just saying. It was all nice and normal until one day the mom was watching the Amityville Horror, starring Canadian treasure Ryan Reynolds, and her daughter walked into the room. It was during a scene where there was a girl on the screen with black pits for eyes and rotting skin. Her daughter then says that looks like Kelly, which her mom responds with, "Who's Kelly?" And her daughter replies, "Oh, Kelly's the girl who's living in my closet." I bet her mom had a great sleep that night. At number 5, we have A Family Spirit. So we've got another one that we snagged right off of Reddit.
These are supposed to be real.
Reddit is such a wonderful place. You can get everything you want. You can find illegal streaming websites, buy or sell used underwear, and even find terrifying stories about kids with demonic imaginary friends. This story was written by R. Coley32. She said her daughter told her the story about a tall man who would visit her at night. This tall man would do the sign of the cross on her forehead. If it wasn't bad enough that ghosts are coming into your home, now they're touching you, then the creepy factor got turned all the way up to 11 when her and her daughter were going through some family photos. They came across a picture of R. Crowley's late grandfather, and the little girl said that is the man that has been visiting her at night. Wow. This is where it gets good. The little girl had never met her great-grandfather before, and this was the first time she'd ever seen a picture of him. And when the dude was still alive, he would do the sign of the cross on all his kids' foreheads before they went to sleep. So I guess it's a little better knowing that the ghost who's coming into your house is a family member.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. I don't know where.
At least it's not a demon or something.
At number 4, we have A Family Man. This one might be a real imaginary friend or demonic ghost murderer. The story comes from a sister of a little boy named Jordan. And Jordan had an imaginary friend named Roger. Roger was a family man with 9 kids, and Jordan and Roger got on fabulously, until one day when the little boy announced that Roger has gone and killed his whole family. Well, that's a very abrupt ending to a friendship. Well, this might have just all been the kid's head who didn't really understand the weight of death and murdering your 9. Or was it the ghost of a crazed man who was left behind from the murder he committed. Either way, if I have kids, I'm gonna get a tablet into their
Why
hands
are they
as
showing
fast as
Mr.
possible.
Rogers here?
There is no way in hell there's a ghost out there that is more entertaining than the whole internet. I don't care if you killed 10. You're not beating Netflix or Russian dashcam videos. No, my kid's not gonna talk to you. Sticking on the tablet. At number 3, we have Jenny. Okay, so this one literally gave me goosebumps. This story is about a single mom and her daughter who have just moved into a new home. Not long after they settled in, the little girl started playing with an imaginary friend named Jenny. The kid's in a new place with just her and her mom, so it seemed pretty normal. One day, the unseen friend named Jenny asked the little girl if she could ask her mom if the cat could play in the basement. Her mom said yes. Why wouldn't she? This seems like a very simple request. Then the cat went missing. They couldn't find the little kitty anywhere. A couple days after the cat went missing, the little girl told her mom that Jenny wanted to play with her in the basement. The mom was really freaked out and of course said no. The next day, the little girl woke up with scratches all over her body. What the hell was going on? They did some research into what was going on in this home, and Jenny was a girl who went missing in the basement a long time ago, and no one ever found her. This was spooky as hell, so the two quickly moved out, and I'm assuming they put the house on the market for a low price. At number 2,
I'm
we have
thinking
the
it
Bunny
wasn't-
Man. Taking care of kids can be so much fun, or you could be taking care of kids that think there's a demon that looks like the Easter Bunny living in their home. This story comes from a girl who says when she was 16, she would babysit 2 twins who were terrified by a thing they called the Bunny Man. On more than one occasion,
They've made some
one of the
movies
twins
on
would
that,
start
some bad
screaming,
horror
claiming
movies.
that the Bunny Man was in the room with him. Sometimes the other twin could sense that his brother was in trouble and tell the babysitter to go help. Now, this might have just been a prank to scare the crap out of a 16-year-old who's just trying to make a little bit of money, but she said that when they claimed they would see him, they would be terrified. Sometimes they would even be crying. So what do you think this is? Great actors ready to go into their Oscar role? Or is this the real life Donnie Darko?
I don't know
we
about
have
that.
Mr. Man. Okay, and last on our list is the story of Mr. Man. You may have heard of this one. It was a pretty famous story on Reddit. It comes from a guy who said when he was 5 years old, he would be visited by a figure a few times a week. This would always happen when he would go to bed. He would see a tall man dressed in all black. He was bald and had a frowning face. He was probably frowning because he found out that he has to be bald in his entire afterlife. You stay bald when you're dead? That's a huge bummer. This figure would never hurt him, but it would just kind of float above his bed like a really creepy roommate. Then one day, it just vanished and never came back. It wasn't until years later, when he was all grown up, that Mr. Man made his return. He saw the shadowy figure looking at him through a doorway, and then it used its ghostly powers to swing the door shut. At number 10, we have Angel. A demon naming itself Angel. Seems like a plan so dumb it might work. That's like going into a bank with a and being like, oh, I'm the vault inspector. Nothing to see here. Just came to look at the vault and I'll be on my way. Why do you have that big bag with the dollar sign on it? Oh, no reason. That's just my bag I carry all my toys in to give to the kids at the hospital. Nothing to worry about. This one was thrown on Reddit by Redditor Sword Rallier. He wrote about when he was a kid and he had no friends, which is a very huge bummer to start this story. Well, to fight this tragic case of loseritis, he made up an imaginary friend named Angel. This was fitting because Angel was his middle name. I mean, he could have got a little more creative. You can literally name this thing whatever you want, but I'll let it slide. Well, him and Angel would play and our narrative redditor would have a great time. That's until he started to make friends. Once he took a step out of Loserville and people started to hang out with him, Angel would get angry. He would start to cause trouble, break things, and hurt people. Sword Rallier would have to make up excuses to explain Angel's behavior. So what do you think about this? Do you think this was a demon following this poor kid around? Or do you think he manifested an entity to explain his own bad behavior? Does Angel the demon not exist?
Think he did
and
that.
It's all just in this redditor's head as he attacks the people around him.
I think
and number 9,
something
we have
attached
Betsy.
to him,
This story starts off when the writer of this post was only 5 years old.
issues.
Her mom walked out on her sister, and her dad. It was now her dad's job to watch them both, but because of his wife leaving him, he started to turn to booze. After some time, they moved into a new neighborhood where the writer knew no one and quickly made friends with a young girl named Betsy. The two would play almost every day. Betsy would show her around town, and once they grew close, she went over to spend the night at Betsy's house. But eventually, Betsy moved away, and then the two lost contact. Now, years later, she's in her early 20s, and she was talking to her dad and her sister about Betsy, and they both told her that Betsy wasn't real, that she was an imaginary friend, and when she would play with her, she would just be talking to herself. This conversation turned into an argument, and then she asked her dad, well then whose house did I stay at that night? Her dad told her that that's the reason I don't drink anymore. And that's where where the story ends. This one sounds a little more like it was made up with a cliffhanger, but it could be true.
All of them
Demons
kind of
posing as
sound
little
made
girls
up
so
to
they
me.
can brainwash you until you feel safe and then try to steal you away. At number 8, we have the Green Man. This one comes way of Redditor X Riot Starter 13X. Great name. He said when he was a kid, he had an imaginary friend called the Green Man. He was a very tall guy with a doctor's mask on, and he wore green scrubs. On top of this, he was covered in blood. Some kids choose flying elephants for their imaginary friends. Others have some dude who just worked a 12-hour shift in the ER. This imaginary friend would freak his parents out, so they sent him to a psychiatrist who determined that this was their son's way of dealing with his sick grandparents. He had been spending a lot of time in hospitals visiting them, so they chalked this up to him just having a big imagination. But Riot Starter swears this guy was real. He would set a place for him at the table when his family would sit down to eat, and I can't imagine a better hiding place for a demon than a hospital. So many fresh souls.
I don't remember ever having an imaginary
boy
friend.
In the tree. A father and daughter are walking through the park and they come to a tree. The little girl says, "Hey dad, look, there's a little boy in the tree." And the dad looks up there, but there's no one in the tree. He asks his little girl what the boy looks like, and she starts to describe him, his clothes, his shoes, his face, his hair. The dad is pretty freaked out, and then the two of them leave. That night they're back at home, and when everyone is asleep, the dad is woken up by a scream coming from his daughter's room. He runs in there, and she is in the corner crying. He asks his daughter what's wrong, and she says she told the little boy to come stay with us, and now he's not the boy. He's trying to take me away. Thankfully, the dad was quick to act. He had the house blessed, and then there was no sign of the boy anymore. But he never forgot the scream that woke him up that night.
Yeah, they
At number 6, we have
disguised
Alfred.
themselves.
I grabbed this one off of Reddit, and it kind of makes my skin crawl. This Redditor wrote about an old man that would visit them during the day, and his name was Alfred. He would sit by her while she watched TV and her mom was making dinner. Her mom never thought anything of this because she was a very young girl. She was only about 5 at the time. But every now and again, Alfred would tell her to stop watching TV and go play in the yard, to go dig in the dirt. She would tell him no because she didn't want to get dirty before dinner. So Alfred started showing up at night and in the morning, trying to get the girl to play in the dirt in the backyard. She would ignore him, but after her and her mom moved out, the house got demolished for a new build. When they dug up the ground, they found 4 bodies of people who previously lived in the house. You think Alfred was trying to warn her or show her where he wanted her to end up? At number 5, we have The Children. This person wrote about the home she grew up in where there was so much paranormal activity she had to move out. When she was just a young girl, probably around 3 or 4, she would see small children run through the house. Not completely, but just glimpses, them running down hallways, sometimes in the backyard. This would increase more and more until she started to play with them. They would partake in games, and her parents never really thought it was weird because they lived in such a secluded area. So it'd be normal for a young girl to make up some imaginary friends to play with. As she played with them more and more, they asked her to start to do dangerous things, like take knives from the kitchen and hide them in a room, or take a lighter and burn the drapes. She was young, but she knew this behavior was wrong, so she denied them. Then things started to get bad. Loud bangs could be heard throughout the house at night, and on more than one occasion the little girl woke up screaming with scratches on her body. The children would talk to her and tell her that they would hurt her family unless she listened. Throughout these paranormal activities, she told her family that it was these children, but they didn't want to believe her until her mother saw them. Late one night, she looked out the kitchen window and saw what had to be a dozen children staring back at her with black pits for eyes.
The
they
black
moved
eyed
out
kids.
shortly after that.
A whole gang
At
of
number
them.
4, we have Hook. This next one is going to make you feel so helpless. Dominic wrote this, and he said when he was a kid, he would visit his grandparents quite often. If he ever went into the basement, he would see a man there who he called Hook because he was always carrying around a long curved hook. The man didn't talk, but he would smile at the boy. He told his grandparents about him, but they just laughed. They thought it was just a child's imagination. Eventually, they got a little worried, so they brought a priest in to see if he could do anything. After the priest came in to visit, Hook told Dominic that his grandparents were going to go away because they were trying to get rid of him. The next week, both his grandparents died in their sleep. He never went back to the home because he was too afraid. But the house still stands, and there's people living there right now. At number 3, we have Scott.
Not good either.
Be careful who your friends are, or you can end up with a situation like this. The person writing the story said that they were in elementary school at the time, and himself and his friend Ryan befriended a new friend, a very quiet, very awkward kid named Andrew. He didn't really talk to people in class. He would often talk to himself, but it seemed like he was engaged. stage, like someone was there. After the writer and Ryan got to know Andrew a little bit more, they decided to have a sleepover at Andrew's house. They had fun during the day, but that night they were all sleeping in Andrew's living room. Our writer was woken up by Andrew standing over him and making a high-pitched squeaking noise. This was so loud that it woke up Ryan sleeping next to him. The two of them were frozen with fear as Andrew squeaked. The noise slowly died down until Andrew was silent, and then he said, "Scotty wants you to leave." The two boys were so freaked out that they got up to go tell Andrew's mom, but as soon as they moved, Andrew let out a booming scream. It was so loud that the boys started to tremble, and Andrew's mom came bolting down the stairs. When she came into the room, she flipped on the lights, and that's when they saw scratches all over Andrew's arms. Andrew's mom then held him down and kept repeating, "Scotty isn't real, Scotty isn't real." After Andrew calmed down, she drove both the boys home. Then they didn't talk to him for a long time, and finally when they did, he said, "Don't worry, Scotty's gone now." At number 2, we have Bad Friend. It's always nice to get a scare when you're visiting someone's home. A young man was having dinner at his professor's house with his professor's wife, Susan, and his son, Jacob. During the dinner, Jacob kept looking into the hallway nervously. The writer of this story could tell that Jacob was frightened because of the look on his face. The professor eventually asked his son if he was seeing one of his friends in the hallway. The boy said yes, and the professor said, "A good friend or a bad friend?" And Jacob answered back, "Bad friend." So our visitor asked the young boy, "Why is he a bad friend?" To which the boy said, "Sharp hands." Yeah, that's gonna be the last time I come over for dinner. And for the number 1 spot, we have MAURY. A guy came to a dude's house, he found out that he was the father. Whoa, I'm just kidding.
I was wondering if something like that was gonna come up.
I think it's the freakiest one we've had in the series so far. This takes place in Florida, where a girl was visiting her little cousin and her aunt and uncle. She was spending a week there. The first day, everything went normal until it was time to sleep, because she had to sleep in the attic. Not super creepy because the attic had been refinished and was actually pretty nice. What was weird was how she was woken up. That night, her little cousin woke her up standing right next to her bed. It was 3 a.m. and she was a little shocked, but she stayed up talking to him. He kept talking about a friend named MAURY who lived in his room with him. This happened a couple more times, so she decided to ask her aunt and uncle about his imaginary friend. They both had never heard of him, and her cousin denied it. That night she was woken up again, but this time her cousin wasn't friendly. He was very angry, and he kept asking, "Why did you tell them?" Eventually, he calmed down and went back to bed, but the following night, she was woken up by thumping under her bed. She was terrified, but she went to see what was under there, and she saw her cousin curled up in a ball, and he said, "I have to stay here so MAURY doesn't hurt you. He wants to hurt you." This obviously scared the crap out of her, so she ran out of the attic and out of the house. Her aunt and uncle came out and found her outside. The creepiest part about this whole story is years later, she brought it up with her aunt and uncle and cousin, and all of them denied it and said that none of it ever happened.
Oh, that's okay. Now that's really creepy. That is really, really creepy. Seems to me that all these like bad spirits, they always go after the weak. They always go after someone who, like a little kid, or somebody who's has. Trying to think of what I can say here on YouTube. Those kind of problems, or those kind of problems. You know, they always go for people like that. Let me know. That was kind of interesting. I don't know. I think they're mostly just stories, but let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. Now, how about a joke? It's time for a joke to brighten your day. When it comes to money, I'm set for life, providing I die next Tuesday. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hashtag Mean Gene, all that fun stuff. And if you like this video, tell all your friends, leave a comment down below. And if you didn't like it, then just shut up. And I will see you next time.